Jean-Louis Ricard, thank you so much for having me here at A-System in Paris. You're the senior advisor here at A-System, but before we get into your role and some of the work that you do, I want to hear about where you grew up and how you got in the nuclear space to begin with.
So thank you to welcome me and
of course,
give me a chance to talk with you about nuclear energy and more globally about energy challenges the world has to face.
Big ones.
I have a chance to work for 35 years for energy world, sometimes to energy nuclear companies, other time for car makers, and to develop new solutions inside car makers. For example, I was in charge of Renault-Nissan Alliance, engineering, manufacturing, IT, quality, from 2000 to 2010. So at this time, I appreciated how it was necessary to change the way to develop transportation means as to face a global eating challenge.
Yeah. So are you an engineer then by practice?
At the beginning, I am a mathematician, but I switched very quick to engineering.
Because it was more practical than math, or what was the reason for the switch?
No, in fact, I discovered that all during my life through engineering works, in fact, mathematics are absolutely fundamental to try to understand how the world is working.
Right.
And to try to appreciate options you have to take as to mitigate the risks.
Yeah. And so then engineering was your way of sort of using that to not only understand what was going on behind the scenes, but to sort of accelerate what was going on in terms of, the energy industry.
But, I think that nowadays we need not just to focus on techniques, on engineering. You need to take into consideration engineering, technology, politics, the way the people agree and accept solutions. So you have to appreciate globally.
Right.
And even if you have very, very, I would say, disruptive and positive ideas, if public opinion don't welcome, that's the end. So you need to take into consideration the new spirit of the world, which requests a lot compared to the past.
Yeah.
That's very, very important.
So how do you do that? Do you just get experience in the industry and build up on those skills?
But, my experience through Renault-Nissan top management was very fruitful because when you are involved in the B2C business, even if you develop the best technological solution, if your customers don't buy, that's all.
Right.
So you need to take into consideration the way public people perceive the product you develop.
Right.
Not just say we have the best products, we are convinced of. But if you don't sell them, that's the end.
Right.
So you need to take into consideration how the public people understand, appreciate, react, inform what you propose. And that's a B2C basic, I would say, lesson. So, well, take into consideration what your customers are waiting for. That's the same, I think, for energy. You have to be sure that what you propose is positively perceived by people.
Yeah. Would you say that before you actually actively became involved in the energy industry, did you know where your energy was coming from and, sort of know the history behind it, or was it all new to you coming to the industry?
From the early beginning, during my universities, I was involved in energy. So I started to work for Energy World I was 21, 22 years old. So I worked for energy from the beginning.
So how did you get interested in it to start? Did you, your family, were they involved in the energy industry or?
No, because the head of the nuclear company in France invited me to join him. So I follow him, that's all.
Wow. That's pretty amazing that he invited you to join him.
So that occurs a lot of time, You don't, I would say, forecast exactly what you will do.
Yeah.
You take opportunities.
Right.
And life is the ability to take opportunities.
Did you have sort of a understanding already of what nuclear was and any sort of opinion on it, whether you were pro or anti?
When I started to work 40 years ago, nuclear energy promised, I will say, fantastic future.
Right.
40 years ago, just 40 years ago, it was just after the crisis, oil crisis, 1973, 1978. And at this point of time, nuclear energy was perceived as the solution.
Right.
The solution 40 years ago. And well, it's interesting to ask ourselves what occurred to switch to the situation we have to face today.
Right.
In fact, when you look in China, in India, including in UK, the nuclear energy perception is quite positive.
Right.
And there are some countries like Germany, France, and perhaps Spain and Italy, where the perception is different. But even in Finland, just look in Finland, they develop new nuclear power plants and they feel very comfortable with the new one they are developing. So there is a very, very specific mindset in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, about Belgium, about nuclear energy. And I think it's quite interesting to try to understand why.
Right.
Why this situation is such compared first to UK, where UK decided to develop nuclear power plants for the future and no one debate about.
Right.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, happened? Do you think it was the Chernobyl and the Fukushimas, or do you think it was more of the political and economic issues?
No, Fukushima, I will compare. Just that not because Boeing is facing a very, very critical situation with 747,
right.
37, sorry, MAX. That's not why all the aircraft of the world are criticized.
Right.
So that's not because Fukushima occurred that the difficulties for nuclear energy perception are there. I think that's just because there is no, for other reasons, there is no strong political support and no political ability to address long-term issues, because you don't develop nuclear plants to serve the needs for tomorrow.
Right.
If you decide to construct new nuclear plants, that's because you try to serve energy needs from 2040 to 2100.
Right, which people don't want to look at right now because we have more pressing problems.
In some countries, people are able to look in long term. Mm-hmm. That's true in China, that's true in India, that's true in Russia, that's true in UK. And perhaps because UK is an island, UK consider they have to solve their energy needs by themselves.
Yeah.
So they are more responsible compared to others who have the feeling that if such and such country is not able to produce energy they need, they will import from neighbors.
Right.
So, that's, I think, when we speak about nuclear energy, we have to be cautious about the very, very specific situation in France, Germany, Belgium, Spain and Italy, I will say, which is quite specific compared to almost everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Just look, Turkey is developing nuclear energy. Just look, Middle East is developing, Abu Dhabi is developing nuclear energy. So Morocco is planning for, Egypt is planning for. Mm-hmm. So a lot of developing countries have selected the option to develop nuclear energy.
Right.
Why is this very, very specific situation in Europe? That's the key question, in fact.
So do you think that going forward, the path would be to convince politicians, or do you think it would be to cut down on the timeline that it would take to get nuclear out as a viable commercial product?
But, the issue is how much energy Europe will need, I will say, in 2050.
Yeah.
How much energy will be necessary?
Right.
Some people explain, well, we have just to divide by 2, by 3.
What we have now?
What we have now. And that, to some extent, people say, well, we have to cut by 2.
So they're talking about decreasing.
It's easy to say.
Yeah.
But in practice, what does it mean? There are some people who promote the idea that we have to decrease our lifestyle, as to decrease our consumption, and so to decrease our energy needs.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that's crazy, because imagine to organize such a decrease of, I would say, consumption of goods means, to some extent, that we shall organize by ourselves what generated the crisis of 1929. You know, it will, if you imagine such a scenario, it will create a blast, a social blast
Right.
in Europe. So it's absolutely impossible to imagine so. All the world is, I will say, driven by the growth.
Mm-hmm.
Just look, every month in each country, you publish a KPI, which is the growth compared to the months before.
Right.
The growth of national product. And so these parameters are the key of all the world mechanisms. And all the world is working this way for years and years and years. So is impossible to change. So if you keep this idea that the economical growth will continue,
mm-hmm.
to some extent, energy needs will increase.
Right.
And so the issue is how to serve these needs. That's the key point.
Yeah.
And that's why, in fact, the Chinese, the Indians, the Egyptians, the Turkish develop nuclear energy, because they know that they have to address this energy needs issue and mitigate the global warming effect. And so,
right.
as to do so, you have to take options in the long term.
Yeah.
And that's why, in fact, they decide to continue to develop nuclear energy.
I would even argue that it would be impractical to think of just reducing consumption would solve the problem, because let's say that climate change does advance, and maybe now on a more global scale, we'll have to use, say, seawater desalination just to get drinking water. That's really energy intensive. So even if, people per se aren't actually consuming more energy for their electronics or lights in a building, we're still going to need more electricity to get people clean drinking water and, an air-conditioned room when the temperatures get really hot or the temperatures get too cold, right? I mean,
yes,
it's like all about climate change.
I think we have to think about step by step.
Yeah.
But first, if we look, what are the main use of energy?
Mm-hmm.
There are two main sectors. Transportation, one.
Industry.
Eating, housing, second. So, to heat houses and all the service for private home,
mm-hmm.
That's 2/3 of the global needs for energy, 2/3. So for cars, for transportation, it's absolutely obvious that we have to move as quick as possible
mm-hmm.
to electric cars.
Yeah.
And quite sure in the 10, 15 years to come, it will be possible to operate electric cars in a convenient way. It does not mean electric car will totally substitute to gasoline cars.
Right.
Because gasoline cars have been developed for 100 years, taking advantage of the fantastic power of 1 liter of fuel.
Right.
1 liter of fuel is very easy to transport, very easy to handle, very cheap. 1 liter of gasoline is cheaper
mm-hmm.
than 1 liter of mineral water.
Right.
Just think about that. So it means that gasoline is a fantastic product.
Mm-hmm.
And all the transportation organizations have been developed based on this.
Right.
So when you think about what might be the world with electric cars, it will be a little bit different. We don't need electric cars able to drive without refueling for 1,000 kilometers, mm-hmm. as almost all the gasoline cars are able to do. We have no need for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we shall change a bit the way to use cars.
Right.
Because electricity and batteries are different compared to gasoline tanks.
Right.
But no matter, it will occur.
But we need to change because of the carbon emissions, emissions from the tailpipe.
No, not just because of carbon emissions.
Uh-huh.
First, I think we need to change because of pollution by transportation.
Got it.
You have a lot of particles
mm-hmm.
which are emitted. You have a lot of dioxide of NOx which are emitted. So you have pollution far above CO2 effects.
Right.
So obviously you need to switch transportation downtown to electric as quick as possible for this first reason, which is pollution.
But then to actually prevent the pollution problem by switching to electric, you'd need your source of electrons to come from something that doesn't contribute to that pollution. So,
but it may contribute once, and not for 10 years during. So there is no debate about that. I think in 30 years, almost all large cities will use electric transportation. So and if you imagine so you switch a lot of oil, gas usage to electricity. That's the first point. And through that, you have clean air and no CO2 emission by the car itself.
Right.
Second, it's absolutely obvious also that due to the global warming effect, air cooling system will develop over the world. And what is necessary now in the south of Europe will be necessary everywhere in Europe.
Right.
And just imagine, Miami will never developed if air cooling system did not exist. Right. That's because Singapore will never developed if air cooling system did not exist. The same for Texas, the same for Palm Springs in the US.
Or the other way around.
A lot of cities in the middle of the earth developed because air cooling system existed.
Right.
And so I think today in the world there are 2 billion air cooling systems in operation.
Wow.
The forecast is 6 billion in 2050.
Wow.
But
it's huge, 3 times growth.
Yes, for a lot of reasons. For comfort and because of the global warming effect. And if you assume this, you know that almost all air cooling systems now may switch from cooling to heating and vice versa. They're the same features, the same devices, which are able to cool in summer and heat in winter. And so due to that, it's quite obvious that a lot of heating usage will switch to electricity in the 30 years to come.
Right.
So it means that for transportation and homes, a lot of usage will switch from oil or gas to electricity. Right. That's the first step of transformation. And second step is to say, well, if you generate electricity by burning gas, oil, or coal, you have no result about CO2.
Right.
But if you generate electricity using generation which don't emit CO2, you are the winner.
Right.
So, that's a step-by-step process. Switch to electricity instead of oil, gas, or coal for transportation and heating. Switch to electricity first. And second, switch to electricity generated without fossil fuels. And the issue is how to serve almost all the needs for energy for all the world by electricity without using oil, gas, or coal. That's the issue.
Yeah. So why wouldn't you reverse these two and you say, okay, first let's get governments and the public and industry to support nuclear and have nuclear make up a large percentage of the grid. And then once they've seen that this is a viable clean energy source, a baseload source, now let's electrify everything and use nuclear for it, versus the other way around where maybe we'll get stuck in a pattern of not valuing nuclear and then becoming more dependent on coal and oil and natural gas.
No, I don't think that the way the issue has to be raised up. Why? That's a specific situation, country per country. In France today, we have sufficient means to produce electricity for 20, 30 years. All the power plants are running well, so no issue. So we have to face the situation in 2050. So when all the nuclear power plants in France will be 60 years old, how we manage the next step. That's the French situation. We may come back later to it if you wish. In Germany, it's totally different. In Germany, frankly speaking, it's totally crazy what occurs. What occurs in Germany is that they plan to stop their nuclear power plants in 2022, and they have no other option than developing coal fire plant or gas fire plant. So in Germany, in the years to come, they will stop nuclear and increase their CO2 emissions.
Right.
Because they decided to stop. That's almost the same in Belgium. In Belgium, they plan to stop their nuclear power plants in the years to come. And so 2025, and they plan to import electricity from somewhere else. Perhaps from France, produced by nuclear power plants in France, or from other countries by oil, gas, or coal.
Right.
So, that's to some extent we may call it the Californian symptom. You know it? Name of which is NIMBY.
Yeah. Not in my backyard.
Not backyard. So you may be green, and you import electricity, and when you import electricity, there is no CO2 content in your country.
Right.
If this electricity is produced by coal fire plant somewhere else, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
So we have to be very, very cautious about this, because one trend may be to say, well, I am green here and I am black where the goods I consume here are produced.
Right.
So, and that's another very, very important point, to be coherent.
Right.
And not to import, to avoid to emit by ourselves.
And that's because the global warming or climate change is a global issue. So it doesn't really matter if you're green, as long as the places that you're getting your energy from are black, it's going to affect on a global scale
But,
the carbon emissions, the air quality.
Which is responsible for that? That's the COP21 agreement. Because COP21 focus on, for each country, national emissions. How much CO2 you emit from your country.
Yeah.
And not at all how much CO2 you emit worldwide to produce all the goods you consume in your country. That's the difference. And for different countries, you observe that they optimize their emission from their country, and globally, the result is the other one. The emission increase because they import goods, the production of which needs a lot of energy, and a lot of products which are produced in China emit a lot of CO2 to be produced. But when you import, they are green.
Right, and the incentive is because those products are now cheaper for you.
Well, and so there is not at all today a global management of CO2 emissions linked by the goods you consume, you buy.
Yeah.
And that's the real issue.
Right.
And it's so easy to say, well, that's the Californian syndrome. I am green, no matter if the electricity or the goods I buy are produced somewhere where to produce them, emission of CO2 or other products are very bad.
Right.
So that's remain to be done, globally speaking.
Yeah. I really like that idea of sort of cataloging on a global scale the different imports and exports and energy production across the countries to see sort of the balance of it all and where it's shifting into places that maybe we could go in and have some nuclear. And so then we could still have the same goods and the same levels of production, but maybe with a cleaner energy source. That'd be really interesting to see.
Of course, but that's a very, very critical point,
Yeah.
To take into consideration the so-called, the name of which, quite scientific name of it is carbon footprint.
Right.
You have not just to take into consideration your carbon emissions from your country. You have to take into consideration your carbon footprint.
Right.
And for example, in France, the carbon emission from the country is 400 million tons of CO2. The carbon footprint is 750.
Wow.
Twice.
That's amazing.
So it means that's more than double.
Right.
And in France, you see that during the last 20 years, we decrease emission from the national territory.
Right.
And we double the emission, I call them imported emission.
Right.
And the balance is negative. And so the trend is, I no longer produce here to fit with my KPIs.
Right.
I produce somewhere else and I import, and the impact is zero. That's
crazy.
Yes, but that's a reality,
Right.
Everyone agree on that. But it means in practice that you import from China a lot of goods. Production of them needs a lot of energy because China has no constraint by COP21, as you know.
Right.
And so the result of that is that you import from countries which have no constraints about CO2 emission goods just to avoid to increase your national emissions.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Right.
And that's totally counterproductive facing the global warming effect. That's totally counterproductive.
Right.
So some people explain that you may implement a carbon tax around Europe. That might be an idea, That's a way to address this point, to say, well, we tax products produced somewhere else as to balance the fact that perhaps they are cheaper to be produced in China. But if you compare producing in China plus the tax versus producing here with a better energy efficiency, you may elaborate the tax as to equilibrate this.
Have we looked at that? The balance between implementing a carbon tax versus just disincentivizing the production in Europe?
Of course, Emmanuel Macron.
Yes.
And he delivered a speech 1 year ago, so-called Discours de la Sorbonne.
What does that mean?
Which is a speech which was, he delivered last year, during which he explained his vision about the, world equilibriums, and including this one.
And what did he say?
He said, we have to implement this. But
the carbon tax.
It's a carbon tax at the boundaries of Europe. But of course, you face a lot of opponents.
Right.
For such strategies.
Because it's going to be bad for their industries and their businesses.
It depends upon how you imagine industry in 30 years. Will industry continue to be absolutely global, or will industry become more regional?
I guess a lot of that depends on energy, right?
No, that depends about a lot of concerns, including the economical growth, including the employment, including all that. Just look at what occurs in the US today. What the US administration is doing, you say, well, we have to produce ourselves almost all we consume.
Right.
And that's not possible at the scale of one country like UK, France, Germany or so. But at the scale of a region where 1 billion people are living, it's perfectly possible.
Right.
Well, and so I think that's a very, very important issue for the 20, 30 years to come to appreciate if the world will continue to exchange goods from one end to the earth to the other one, or if so-called relocalization will develop. And my personal guess is that relocalization, for a lot of reasons, will develop.
Yeah.
And so it means, if you assume so, it means that the needs for energy in Europe will increase also for that reason.
Right.
With no impact on the global needs for the world. But you will transfer energy consumption from China, India, and so back to Europe.
Right.
And so when you speak about European needs for energy in 2050, you have to take into consideration these factors. And they may be very, very influential on the quantity of energy you may need.
Right.
And when you produce such goods by industry, you need electricity all day long, all year long.
Right.
And you need
non-intermittent.
not intermittent.
Yeah.
You may not say, well, I produce my goods when the windmills are running.
Yeah.
So in such a case, you need, and the storage of energy for industry request astonishing size of storage systems.
Right, which we just don't even have yet. We're not capable of doing.
So it's impossible, just impossible. If you are serious, it's impossible. And so, when you think about energy in 2050 and the way to deliver electricity without CO2 emissions, you have to take all these points into consideration. Increase of the needs due to transportation switch to electric cars, increase of the needs to air cooling system and heating system in winter, which will substitute to traditional gas or oil furnace to heat your home. So increase of needs of electricity, that's very clear. And how to produce, and you need that on a very permanent way. How to serve this. That's the point.
Right. And
what are the solutions on the table which may be used to serve this target? That's the very, very simple question you have to address.
Yeah. With the answer being nuclear.
What else?
Power.
What else?
What else in addition to nuclear power?
What else? If you consider the quantity of energy, of electricity you need, if you say, well, windmills and solar energy may serve in an intermittent way 20, 30%, how you serve 70%.
Right, you have to use nuclear. There's no other.
If you say so, I agree. But I mean, nuclear is not, as I said before, is not a target by itself. That's a way to serve the needs of people between 2050 and 2100. That's all.
Yeah.
And of course, if you agree to take your shower just when the rain is falling down, no problem.
Right.
You don't need water by service.
Yeah, you just go outside.
You go outside. If you agree to just to use energy when energy is available, that's basically the intermittent characteristics of solar and wind. If you agree for that, if you agree to cook for lunch and to eat coal for dinner because solar energy works during the day, not during the night, and so and so. And some people explain this to say, well, we have just to adapt the way we consume electricity with the way we produce. And if there is no electricity, we stop to take shower for 2-3 days. It's possible, of course. But that's another world.
Right.
That's absolutely another world. And it depends upon the world we wish to live and we wish for our kids. And in fact, I don't believe this world is manageable.
Right.
And so we need energy. We need electricity for energy. We need permanent service of electricity. And so how to serve this in 2050? That's the question. That's a very, very simple question.
Yeah.
And I think, I was very impressed by a speech by Valérie Pécresse a few days ago. Perhaps who is Valérie Pécresse? She is the leader of the Île-de-France area.
Okay.
And she was explaining the following. Now, today, she is strongly criticized by everyone because almost all the coaches downtown Paris have no air cooling system on board.
Coaches, like these are kind of cars that take you around.
Well, so
American audience.
well, so no air cooling system. And she said the following. I said, it's crazy. And everyone criticized me saying, you are crazy. Despite the global warming effect, your bus are not equipped with air cooling system. She said the reason is very simple. We bought a lot of new buses 10 years ago. And at this point of time, the head of Île-de-France region was a green. And he refused the bus to be equipped with air cooling system because air cooling system burn energy. Yeah. And she said, well, that's the result 10 years later. So we have to be very, very careful not to adopt concerning all these topics a quite, I will say, mystic mindset.
Right.
Not trying to think about what may occur in 10 years from now and what will be the consequences. So we have to be absolutely realistic on what will be the real situation in 2050. Not to say, well, we shall cut by 2 our energy consumption. It will not occur, because if today we take this assumption, we will not take now critical decision, the impact of them will be in 2040, 2050. So we have to be realistic in front of what will occur. We have to be realistic to recognize that whatever we do in Europe, the global warming effect will be the same in Europe, because the global warming effect is due to China, is due to India, is due to US, and the increase of temperature and all the impact of global warming effect, which will hit Europe in 30 years, will be the same, whatever would be our attitude in the 10, 20 years to come in Europe. So air cooling system at home will be absolutely necessary in Europe in 20, 30 years. That's a reality.
Right.
It's impossible to deny this. If you deny this, some people try to explain that if you cut your energy consumption by 2 in Europe, you shall protect Europe against global warming effect. And perhaps you perceive that. And there is in the mindset of people, there is a huge confusion, including the fact that a lot of people consider that nuclear energy operation, nuclear power plant, generates CO2.
Right.
So there is.
So that's step one, is to sort of educate people.
At least for politicians,
be
responsible concerning what will occur in 20, 30 years. And the decision they take today will impact the life. Well, and recognizing that, sometimes I explain some of them the following. Say, if I understand what you mean, you say, we have to stop to breathe because when we breathe, we emit CO2. That's the limit of the thought, but some people are close to say so.
Right.
And that's crazy. So you have to face the future as it is, not as you may dream it might be.
Right.
And all your decisions have to be based on this realistic vision of the future. And,
which is increased energy consumption.
And increased energy. First, before that, the fact that the world population will increase from 7 billion today to 10 billions in 2050. 3 billions people more.
It's a huge amount to accommodate.
And what is very impressive, when you think about these figures, half of them, 5 billion people in 2050, will be below 30. So half of the world population will be young, below 30 in 2050. So the first question is, what is the dream for these people? Right. And all these people will be in China, will be in Africa, will be in India. In fact, Europe, US, Japan will represent 1.3, 1.4 billion among the 10 billion.
That's crazy. That's such a small proportion.
And that's...
You got a chart?
That's a chart. But it's not so complex, all that. It's quite simple.
Sometimes people just need to hear it. Maybe, people just haven't been exposed to that.
But and everyone agreed to say there will be 10 billion people in the world 2050.
Yeah.
So when you say so, well, that's the world 2050. 10 billion.
And what's this here? This is temperature change?
No. Yeah. And so to say, well, if these people, these 10 billion people, in average, burn the same quantity of energy as of today, in such a case, the world temperature will increase by 3 degrees.
3 degrees, that's huge.
If you decrease by 30% compared to today.
The population by 30%?
No, the energy consumption.
The energy consumption globally?
No, per individual.
Okay.
You reach, to the case, you maintain at 2 degrees. But
which is still pretty large.
But it means to do so, you need to stabilize the world energy consumption at the level we are reaching today. And so perhaps we're able in Europe, in US, in Europe at least, to decrease. But that's nothing. That's 1/10 of the total. And 90% of the population in the world, in China, in Africa, in Indonesia, and so, dream to share the same lifestyle we have today.
Yeah.
And our style of life needs energy, of course.
Yeah.
When you see it in China, you see in Africa, they buy cars and cars and cars. They try to implement in their countries the dream for the lifestyle we have, in fact, we have shown to them during the last 30, 40 years. So
yeah.
That's their dream. And so when you take all that into consideration, it's absolutely obvious that the world energy consumption will increase a lot in the 30 years to come.
Yeah.
Because the population increase, because the lifestyle standards will increase, and because new use of energy will appear, like internet and so. And it's forecasted that in 2040, electricity needs for internet will represent 10 to 20% of the total electricity consumption worldwide.
That's huge.
And new needs.
Amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it's crazy to deny all that.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's important to keep simple ideas in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Worldwide population will increase. This increase will generate a lot of needs for energy above what we use today. Global warming effect is a reality. We have not to deny about that. And so the responsible attitude is to say how I mitigate both.
Right.
How I serve the needs, 10 million people for high life standard with energy sources which no longer emit CO2.
Yeah.
And when you look at the so-called GIEC, where you see what is GIEC, International Committee about Climate Change.
Okay.
Which published a report September last year, which explained that if we wish to try to remain below 2 degrees, we have to multiply by 5 in the 30 years to come the number of nuclear power plants in operation.
Right.
2 weeks ago, International Energy Agency did the same. We have to develop nuclear energy to mitigate and to limit the risk of global warming.
Right.
Everyone says so. All experts say so. So I think our responsibility is to make this happen. And the issue is how to make this happen.
Yeah. So how, in your role at A-System as senior advisor, and then also previously you were in the innovation space, how do you guys see that actually happening?
I think what is underway in UK, what is underway in Finland, a new power plant is under construction. As far as I know, the public opinion is perfectly quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is we have just to copy what is underway in these countries and make people confident. I think, we have to make people confident on the fact that nuclear energy may be absolutely safe. And that all the organizations which manage safety are very high conscious of their strategic role and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key point.
So how do we actually make people change their public opinion? Or do we, how do we, if we can't get people to change their public opinion, still push the nuclear industry forward in countries like France and the UK, Italy?
No, I think, we need that the politicians will not just address short-term issues, will be able to be courageous and address long-term issues.
Mm-hmm.
They are able to do in the military field. In the military field in Europe, they are able to say, well, we launch a new military aircraft which will replace the generation under operation today by a new one. And perhaps at the Paris Air Show 1 month ago, a model of this new aircraft, which is planned to fly in 2045 from now, was shown. So it means it's possible. But, energy is not yet perceived as an issue as strategic as military defense.
Mm-hmm.
Energy has to be, and electricity generation has to be perceived as a absolutely strategic issue for the future. Like military issues, that's the same. But politicians are able to decide about new aircraft,
mm-hmm.
and not yet about long-term solution for energy and electricity.
Right.
That's what we may observe.
So do you think in terms of the long-term solutions that we should push forward with, reactors that we've already developed and are already operating now? Or do you think that we should go in the direction of new and advanced reactors, like small modular reactors, or both?
I think we have to be very, very cautious. The main asset of nuclear energy today are the thousands of years of operation of existing power plants. That's an absolutely unique knowledge. And in fact, that's a very fundamental basement for safety. Mm-hmm. Years and years and years of operation of such a type of power plant. So when we are speaking about advanced modular reactor, that's in fact the same as PWR.
Mm-hmm.
That's a quite different, I would say, design in detail, but the physics is absolutely the same. So advanced modular reactor based on PWR technology is almost the same as all the reactors which are under operation today.
Mm-hmm.
No debate about that. No, the issue, some people try to promote fast neutron reactor and so. I think there is no chance in the 20, 30 years to come to put into operation such machines. And we have to be very careful not to promote such solution, criticizing for that existing highly qualified solution under operation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just think about once more what occurred to Boeing with 737 MAX. We have to study in detail and understand how we have to be careful when you have a very, very efficient, safe, qualified aircraft, Boeing 737-800.
Mm-hmm.
You innovate a bit, just look what occurs.
Right.
So I think all these machines, aircraft, nuclear power plant, have reached a so high level for sophistication that years of operation is a second to none way to qualify their safety. Just think about Boeing 737. Mm-hmm. It's, I think, a great lesson for everyone about how to be careful about breakthroughs on such highly sophisticated and, of course, dangerous technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as we wrap up, what do you hope for the future of the nuclear industry, by 2050 and for the progress of climate change by that point as well?
I think in France, there is no debate because there is no need for extra means to produce electricity for the next 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. The issue is what will occur in Belgium, what will occur in Germany, where if they stop their nuclear power plants as they plan to do, what will they do? From where they will import their electricity? Mm-hmm. Everyone agreed to say never their windmills and other solar plants will serve their needs. And if Germany is obliged to import electricity for Poland, of course, they will comply with their COP21 targets.
Right.
But in Poland, how they will produce electricity? By coal. Mm-hmm. So, I think in the 10 years to come, the Germany situation and Belgium situation will be absolutely critical. And what also may occur is that the price for electricity will increase a lot. And price for electricity is a critical component for a family about all the costs they have to pay. Mm-hmm. So we have also to keep under control the price for electricity. And for example, in Germany today, the price for electricity is double compared to France. Well, it's a lot of money. If you imagine to apply just mathematical calculation, if you imagine to apply in France the electricity price for Germany, the impact for an average family in France will be the same as increasing the VAT by 8%. You see?
Yeah.
Just tomorrow you decide to apply in France the price for electricity, which now apply in Germany, mm-hmm. It is the same as increasing the VAT by 8%. From 20 to 28, not by 8%, mm-hmm. by 40%. From 20% VAT to 28% VAT. That's the same.
Right.
It's crazy. Just imagine tomorrow that the government decide to increase the VAT from 20 to 28%. Mm-hmm. You have a protest in the roads, in the streets, which will block the country. It's just impossible. That's what occurs in Germany today. The price of electricity is double compared to France. So we have to keep electricity price under control because that's a fundamental component, like the price for water, fundamental components of the family, the cost the families have to pay. Right. And so we have also to balance this. And that means that nuclear energy has to remain cheap. And we have, when we have to ask ourselves, 40 years ago, everywhere in Europe, we developed nuclear power plants. And when you look at the cost of these plants 40 years ago, mm-hmm. and when you look at the cost for new plants we are now developing, what are the reasons which explain such an increase of the cost? And we may observe that there are more than 100 nuclear power plants which are under operation in Europe. Zero problem in 40 years.
Right.
Zero problems.
Very safe, very efficient, clean energy.
Yeah, zero problems.
Yeah.
So that's a fact. So perhaps we were too much ambitious on the design of a new plant, which costs a lot. And what is the purpose of the extra cost? What is the value created through the extra cost? That's not really obvious. So I think we need, for the new generation of power plant, to come back to a more reasonable, simple design, simple to operate. Once more, Boeing 777 MAX.
Yeah, lots of lessons to be learned from it.
Yeah. Okay. High performance and so on. So well, you see the result.
Yeah.
So I think we have to reverse some trends which complicate too much the design of power plants.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
And that's not complicated, you know.
Yeah. Jean-Louis, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.